Welcome back to my multi-part series on how I deep clean my oven, taking it from super gross to looking brand new again. In the first part, we tackled the inside of the oven door, and now we are going to take apart that door to get those spots in between those layers of glass. So I have a Samsung oven, so each oven might be a little bit different, but most ovens have these little hinge locks that you use a flathead screwdriver to flip down, and then it's easy to lift your oven door right off its hinges and place it on the workspace you're going to use. In order to lift up your oven door, you have to put it at about a 5 or 10 degree angle, and then it just lifts right up. I put it on my kitchen table with some towels laid down to protect the surface. And then you start with a Phillips head screwdriver and you remove the 3 screws that are on the bottom side of the door. Now be sure you have a bowl nearby so that you don't lose any screws, because there's a few screws in the process and you don't want to misplace them, so grab a bowl first. After you've taken the screws out of the bottom of the door, up at the top on the opposite side of the handle, there will be 2 screws that you also remove with the Phillips head screwdriver. Now these can be a little bit tough to pull out because they have a sleeve on them that holds them in later when you're going to put your door back together. They're really nifty little tools that I wish more projects had, but it does make it a little difficult to remove them. So if you have to put in a little effort to pull them out, don't worry too much. It's probably just those sleeves inside of the door holding the screw in place, which is actually really helpful. Okay, so when you lift up the door to pull the layers apart, those little metal sleeves that are on those screws are going to fall out in between the layers, and it's going to sound like you broke your door, but you didn't. It's just those little sleeves. And there they are. They clink down, and it can be a little frightening your first time doing this, but it's okay. See, there's one of those little sleeves right there. Now I also want to add that Samsung doors, the handles stay on when you open up the door. I know other ovens don't do that. Sometimes the handles come off when you open them up, so you might want to keep your door laying down if you have a different oven model or make. Now here are those fancy little sleeves that go on the screws right there, those big large ones that are on the opposite side of the handle. And now I'm just going to use this Mrs. Meyer's Clean Day glass cleaner to clean the inside of the door first. And I love this stuff. It's so gentle and it works really well. It doesn't leave any streakiness. It just dries right up to a nice clean shine. And then I'm going to set that part aside, and I'm going to pull the other half of the door over here. And this half of the door, I'm going to clean it off real fast because it makes it easier if you just clean while you go, for me at least. And then you take your screwdriver again, and there's going to be 2 screws on either side of that glass pane. And on the bottom there's just a fitting that the glass pane slides into. So you take out the 2 screws on either side, and then you slide it out. Now be careful when you're doing this part. My brackets don't come off, or they don't seem to, but on some other ovens I know that the brackets on the sides do come off that glass, so you have to carefully hold both the glass and the brackets so that you don't accidentally drop and break that glass. That would be bad news. I just cleaned the rest of the glass with that Mrs. Meyer's glass cleaner and a lint-free towel. I used a flour sack towel. It's one of my favorites when I'm cleaning glass because it doesn't leave behind little bits of lint like some microfibers can. It's actually really simple to put the door back together once you've taken it apart. You just reverse the whole process that you did before. So back on go these 2 screws. And the other 2 screws on the other side. So now we're going to address those long screws with those nifty little sleeves that will hold the screws in place when you're putting the door back together. So you have these 2 long screws with a washer on each, and then these long sleeves that have a pinched in portion that you put toward the end of the screw when you put it in the back side of the door. Here you can see you slide the screw in through the back side of the door, and then you put the sleeve on top of it in the inside of the door. I'll show you again. So you take the big long screw and you put it through a hole in the back of the door, which is like the inside of the door, and then you slide that sleeve on top of it, and that's going to hold it in place while you turn it over and put the door back together. Here you can see from above, there's that screw with that sleeve, and we're going to lay that down on top of the outer portion of the door that has the handle on it. And now you want to line up those screws so that they meet the holes that they're supposed to rest in. There are also these tabs that hang off one side of the door that fit into slots in the metal portion of the door to guide it into place. And here you can hear it click into place when the screws and everything else just falls into place. Once you've done that, you just take those screws that are already resting in their homes, and you might have to wiggle them a little bit to make sure they get in the right spot, and you just screw them on in. And the last step to putting the door back together is putting these 3 screws in the bottom. Now if you're deep cleaning your oven at this point, I took out the racks, and I will show you how I cleaned those in another video, and then I swept all the debris out from the inside of the oven, and I used a knife inside of a microfiber to dust around the housing of the oven because it gets dirty in there before I put the door back on. Now you're ready to put your door back on the oven. You use the same 5 to 10 degree angle, and you lower it down slowly, and you push those little hinge locks back up with a flathead screwdriver. And if you took out your racks, this is the perfect time to use a self-cleaning option if your oven has it. Now this is how my racks turned out, and it really took minimal effort. If you'd like to see how I clean those, check out part 3.